Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Koel. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Outdoors Podcast. And man, do we have a great, entertaining, and educational discussion for you today. If you've ever had any thoughts about trying to make a career in the outdoors, specifically in the world of fishing, well, you could do a whole lot worse than to emulate the guy we've got today. Professional angler Johnnie Candle joins us from the shores of Devil's Lake to talk about a lifetime of fishing and fish guiding and competitive professional angling and communicating and all of the great things he's done over what has been and still is a fantastic career in the outdoors. But before we get to that, a quick reminder, if you don't want to miss any of the great Northland Outdoors information, and including the Northland Outdoors Podcast, make sure you head over to inforum.com and become a subscriber. It's an amazing deal, folks, and you get access to not only the Fargo Forum, but all of their nearly 40 newspaper websites and Northland Outdoors and the Rink Live and all of the great stuff going on over at inforum.com. So make sure you get there and subscribe. And another reminder, don't forget to tune in to Northland Outdoors Television every Sunday night, 10:35, following the 10 o'clock news on WDAY, WDAZ, KBMY in Bismarck, KMCY out in Minot. And then also down in Sioux Falls, we're on Saturday and Sunday nights at 10 o'clock on KSFL for most of our friends down in South Dakota. So always some great episodes this season, so make sure you tune in Sunday nights to Northland Outdoors Television. Now, without further ado, let's talk fishing, professional fishing, and a lifetime on the water with my good friend, Johnnie Candle.
He's one of the hardest working guys I know in the fishing industry and the outdoors in general. Professional angler Johnnie Candle joins us. Thank you, Johnnie, for being on the Northland Outdoors Podcast. How you doing, bud?
Oh, it's my pleasure, Chad. We don't get to chat enough. You know, I think our history goes back. I was trying to think the other day because I have it saved on my computer. I actually converted the VHS to digital not that long ago. It's got to be 22, 23 years ago, I think, the first time we did anything together. So we don't get to chat enough, that's for sure. But it's been a long time.
No, well, I'm glad to get a chance to chat with you today. You know, this is a guy who guides on full-time on Devil's Lake. And by full-time, we mean pretty much full-time. We were just chatting a minute ago. You were just saying that you have one day off on the 4th, and then the next one's sometime in middle of August, and nonstop.
Yeah, it's this year. You know, you always rely on the weather to build in a day or two off. It's done more than that so far this spring, so that's not real good. It's been really windy, but you book yourself every day because you have to. It's not like I'm selling widgets where when you sell out, you go in the factory and build a few more. The inventory of a fishing guide is the calendar. And in the North Country, that means from the day the ice goes off until about the time the ice comes back. It's a very, very limited number of days, and you got to fill them all in. And it's a grind, but it's a grind that you got to love. And man, I could not imagine going to an office or a cubicle 100 and some days in a row, but it's really not that hard, Chad, to get out of bed in the morning and put your feet on the floor and say, well, guess what? I have to go fish again today. So I don't want to complain about it too much.
Yeah, you've got a cubicle. It's about 21 feet long and has about 300 horsepower hanging on the back, I think, is your cubicle. So that's good.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's for those of you who, Johnnie does so much. His social media presence is fantastic. If you haven't seen something from Johnnie, then you're not paying attention. But let's go back and get a little bit of history, Johnnie. Where did this all start? You're from what we in the Northland here called back east, out there in Ohio. How did you get started in fishing in general? And I know it has something to do with a very close relationship you had with your dad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I grew up as I wish more kids grew up, right? My father had a big S on his chest. And no matter what he did, I wanted to do it. And, he was my Superman. We fished together constantly. That turned into a passion for fishing that he and I shared together, which was even more special. And then when I got to high school age, Dad decided to get a little more serious about what he did on the fishing side, and came home one day from school, and Dad said, well, I got my Coast Guard captain's license. I'm buying a 28-foot boat, and we are going to start a charter service on Lake Erie. And I'm like, oh, wow, I don't even know what to do. Well, you learn it the hard way. We went out there and guided on the central basin of Lake Erie out of Ashtabula, Ohio. Left there to go to college, and it made a great college job filling in. Everything worked out well throughout 4 years of school. Got out of college, and like any other young man, decided that there's a little bit of wanderlust there. Wanted to go see the world. Decided I'd enter some of these pro fishing tournaments just to see how good I really was. Next thing you know, I'm guiding full-time on Lake Erie and traveling around the country. Came to Garrison, North Dakota. Met a young woman there that thought I fell madly in love with, moved to North Dakota. We were together for about 4 years, got divorced, ended up in Devil's Lake, and that's kind of the short version on how it all happened. But yeah, I came by it honestly, Chad. Again, fishing with my dad every possible chance I got, learning the business together along the way, putting one foot in front of the other, making quite a few mistakes along the way to get to where I'm at. But that's the condensed Cliff Notes version of how a pro angler got from a young kid in Ohio catching fish from the bank with a cane pole to growing up and learning all he could about the fishing business. And here I am at it, 54 years old, still going strong. So it's been a great ride.
Well, that first foray into the Dakotas when you were up there in Sakakawea is when our paths first crossed back in the late 90s, whatever it was, and we were doing the Great Outdoors at WDAY, and we went up there and filmed a couple days with you then, this young kid, and we got to smash some walleyes, and if I remember correctly, we caught some big smallmouth and just had a blast. But the transition from there, what is it about North Dakota then? Because you could have easily gone back to the Great Lakes, which is, walleye, huge, the Lake Erie and all of them. But you stayed and ended up over on Devil's Lake. What was it about this part of the world that kind of drew you to it?
Well, after the divorce, which is no fun, anybody that's gone through one, my apologies that it has to happen, right? It's not that fun, but I took a step back and you reflect a lot on your life when that happens, and started thinking about what next, right? My safety blanket or my safety net would have been to go back east. I could have jumped right in the charter boat. I could have started booking there and fished from, the time the ice goes off till the ice comes back on Lake Erie, found some odd jobs in the winter months. But fishing in a state with, I don't know what Ohio has, 30 million, 20 million. I don't know. It's, it's one of the biggest states in the country. Obviously, watch the election this November. Right. But you're kind of dust in the wind almost, right? Yeah, you fish. Yeah, it's really cool. You've got 10 buddies that think it's pretty neat that you fish for a living, but not a lot of people really care when you think about mainstream Ohio, right? You go downtown Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. Are there kids that dream of fishing? Yeah, one or two. But you look at North Dakota, and there's a boat in every other driveway. I had an opportunity with Lee Timmerman at K-Fire TV to do tips of the week on the 6 o'clock news that have been running for 28 years now, right? There are no news networks in Ohio that carve out a minute and a half every week from Memorial Day to Labor Day to air a fishing tip as part of the news. Yeah, you can buy a commercial and put it on TV, but North Dakota just made sense. My passion was fishing and the outdoors, and North Dakota's people love fishing and the outdoors. And man, I'm not going to look back and say I made a mistake at all, because I'm in the North Dakota Fishing Hall of Fame, was inducted into there about 3 years ago as the only non-native North Dakotan in the North Dakota Fishing Hall of Fame. So it speaks volumes to how the people of North Dakota accepted me. I actually feel like I am a true North Dakotan, despite only living here half my life. And it just made sense to surround myself with people that eat, sleep, and breathe the same stuff that I have passion for. Mm-hmm. And that's why I stayed 100%. And I'm glad I did. New family since the divorce. I've been with my wife now for over 22 years. 4 wonderful stepdaughters, 5 grandkids now that I'm loving taking fishing on Devil's Lake and anywhere else I can sneak them out to. And I couldn't imagine it any other way. It was definitely the right decision. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything happens for a reason. So, I mean, and we're so glad that he ended up here. No doubt about it. But let's talk a little bit in particular about, quickly first, you were heavy in the competitive side of the sport at the beginning. PWT, NWT, all of those, MWC, and some of those.
Yep.
You pulled back some from that, but did that part of it? What part? Let me ask you: those big tournaments. What did that give you? What kind of did that help in growing you as an angler?
Oh, absolutely, Chad. For those that don't know, I have a marketing degree. Went to college for too many years because I had to work my way through school. It took me 5 years to get through instead of 4, but I earned a marketing degree. I loved studying business. I loved studying storytelling, which is really all marketing it is. You have a brand and you go tell the story of your brand. And it didn't take me long to figure out whether it was guiding or tournament fishing, that I had a brand that I need to build. And that brand was Johnnie Candle. Yes, that brand had a lot of other spokes in the wheel, if you want to call it that, right? I had sponsor X, Y, and Z, and I had a guide service, and I had a tournament persona that I had to create and live through. But I had to create the ultimate brand of Johnnie Candle. And I never really looked at competitive tournament angling as a money-making thing. And it's a really good thing I didn't, because if you sit down and get a ledger book and put your expenses on one side and your earnings on the other, the last thing you're going to do as a professional tournament angler is ever make a profit. It's physically impossible to win enough money to cover your expenses long term. But all those tournaments, the old Cabela's NAWA NAWA series, the PWT, the Masters Walleye Circuit, all those things gave me a platform or a stage to stand on and tell the world about my brand. Chad, you and I both know, and I'm a realist when it comes to it, I wasn't the best tournament angler on the planet. I had my days, the sun shines on a dog's butt every now and again, or you can pick all the cliches you want to throw at it. I've got a wall with plenty of plaques on it here in my office. I do have a couple wins, and I did get lucky, or fortunate, I should say, to win the world championship in the Masters Walleye Circuit in 2010. So I fished well enough to earn credibility, and that credibility allowed me to go sell more things Johnnie Candle to the world that put some dollars and cents in a bank account so I could have a home and raise a family and do fun things on the side and invest for retirement and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. The competitive part of Johnnie Candle's life, very, very important. Not so much, again, because I won a bunch of big trophies, but because it gave me a pathway to the world that didn't have social media back then, right? I started in 1994 and fished until about 3 years ago. And boy, those first decade and a half, Chad, if you didn't tell your own story to folks like yourself at WDAY back then, or to Darcy Egan at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, or if you couldn't get Dave Sanda to listen at In Fisherman and write an article with your name in it every now and again, you didn't have the world's ear like you can now just by buying a cell phone and a clip-on microphone and go tell your story. So those tournaments were my pathway to outdoor media, which got my name out in the public. And again, here I am today doing the best I can to keep that machine rolling. And it's much easier now because we can do a podcast like this without sitting in the same room and talking into a micro tape recorder, which you and I have done many, many times, right? So, it was a great run. 30 years I fished professionally, and it was just time, right? The fire wasn't in the belly anymore. I love sports cliches. I can come up with a lot more if you want me to, but just wasn't there anymore. So I switched gears a little, and I'm sure we'll get to what I'm doing now after a while, but switched gears kind of totally, and still building that brand daily. Still love sharing and teaching and communicating and all that good stuff, but just not standing on that big stage anymore. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think all of this, we could have probably labeled this podcast for those young people who want to make a living in fishing. This is a great tutorial because all of those things you talk about, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that it's those tournaments are a vehicle. It's not necessarily that you're going to go out there and win every tournament, but it gives you a chance to make a name for yourself, and that you did a great job of that. So let's settle in a little bit more to where we are now, guiding. I don't know how many days a year you can tell me, but on Devil's Lake. Okay, so Devil's Lake in particular, let's just talk a little bit about that lake, because in my opinion, it is quite possibly one of the best multi-species kind of versatile fishery in, for sure, the upper Midwest, and possibly even more than that. What is it about Devil's Lake that kind of drew you there and has kept you there?
Well, I was drawn to Devil's Lake when the flooding was starting. So 1993, Devil's Lake was somewhere between 60 and 80,000 acres, depending on how you measure the surface area of the lake. On 2000, when I moved here, it had been flooding for about 6 or 7 years, was growing rapidly, and it was getting all this attention in not just local media, but national media. And every news story ended with, yes, it's devastating, but the fishing is incredible. And you hear that enough times, you got to go check it out, right? So I came over here, again, single guy, nothing holding me down. I think everything I owned at that time fit in the back of my pickup truck anyways. So I came to town, fished for a weekend, and said, you know what? I'm not leaving. I know enough people here. I knocked on a few doors. A couple buddies let me crash on their couch. Zippy Doll from the Perch Patrol was one of those guys. And I started learning the lake, came here in late in the fall and learned a lot through that first winter, helping Zippy with the Perch Patrol. So I guided with them for 2 winters. And the more I learned about the lake, the more I said, wow, why would anyone want to leave here? Not just from a guiding perspective, but again, Chad, I was tournament fishing really heavy at that time. Sure. And you've got a tournament coming up in 6 weeks where you have to go Lindy rig the mud flats at Mille Lacs. Well, I'm a Great Lakes crankbait trolling nut at that point in my life. I didn't know much about pulling a Lindy rig around, but you know what? I could go out on Devil's Lake and pull a Lindy rig and practice catching fish on a Lindy rig. 3 weeks later, you might be at another reservoir and you know you're going to troll bottom bouncers. You come out on Devil's Lake and you trolled bottom bouncers. If you had the vertical jig, you came out and practiced vertical jigging. So I was guiding, and all the time I was guiding, I'm telling myself, Johnny, you're weak at this, you're weak at that. You need to focus on this and this and this. And I could do it right here on Devil's Lake. So it was an incredible opportunity, lots of free media, right? Again, every news story in the country, Devil's Lake is flooding. Oh my goodness. Oh, but if you like to go fishing, go there. So I had free media to promote a guide service. And I had batting practice literally in my backyard to keep me sharp for my tournament fishing. And you can watch, after I moved to Devil's Lake, my standings in the tournament and pro rankings go up and up and up and up because I got to practice more and more and more of all the different techniques I needed to learn. So it just is a great place to headquarter, not just for a guide, but for a tournament pro as well.
Yeah. I was going to mention that when we were talking earlier about you not going back east and staying in North Dakota. And I have to believe I know the answer to this question, but you just probably hit it. That's got to be one of the reasons, because in the central basin of Lake Erie, there's only one or two different ways you're going to catch walleyes. Both of them have to do with planer boards and trolling. And that's about it, right? I mean,
that's all you got, right? I mean, probably could have went out and forced myself to find a fish that you could cast a jig to for a very short window of time, maybe.
Right.
Possibly, as technology developed, you could have hunted them down with sonar and that kind of thing. But boy, that's really recent, right, Chad? So it was pretty much leave the harbor, go out, find a school of fish, put planer boards out and troll through them. And I would have been an incredible one-dimensional angler. And every time we went to a great lake, I'm sure my name would have been on a list to do well. But my victories and highest placing finishes over the years didn't come from Lake Erie. Some did, but the World Championship sure didn't. It came on a river, the Mississippi River, casting crankbaits to rock piles known as wing dams. Well, guess where I learned to do that, Chad?
Yeah, right there. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, absolutely.
Well, and that's
it's just a great proving ground. Again, if you can't sell a guide service in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, you're kind of in trouble. That's a point made by how many guides Game and Fish claim are on Devil's Lake in North Dakota. I believe the number last year was over 180 fishing guides ran at least one guide trip on Devil's Lake last summer. So it's a great place for a fishing guide because we've got tons and tons of fish. We have a lot of water. It's never really crowded. And it's not that hard of a place to get to either, right? You go north till you hit Highway 2 and you go west till you run into this big lake. It's pretty easy to find.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, look for the riprap and you're in Devil's Lake, right? Yeah. I love the fishery in that, and just to expand a little bit more on that, and the fact that you can catch walleyes, and there are other great species in that lake as well. Big pike, some of the most beautiful perch you've ever seen in your life. And I am a white bass nut. I think those things are a blast, and you have mutant white bass in Devil's Lake, bigger than just about anywhere. But the walleye fishing, slip bobbers in the trees, casting cranks as shallow weeds, obviously deep water stuff, spinners, lindy rigs, jigs, you name it. And you can catch them on all of from shore, from the bank. It's one of the greatest shore fishing destinations in the country. And they're not all, it's not all necessary. I know everything has its own little season, but it seems to me like guys are catching them shallow and deep a lot of times on Devil's Lake at the same time. The fish are kind of everywhere.
Well, today's a perfect example of that, right? I fished in about 13 feet of water this morning with my guide clients. We smashed the limit there, 10 fish in about an hour and a half on a piece of flooded man-made structure, right? So imagine a beautiful rock reef in any Minnesota or Wisconsin lake, and then just build it, right? Well, they didn't build it as a reef. What we were fishing on today was an old water treatment holding pond, but it's riprap on the sides, flat gravel road on top. It's a beautiful reef, right? Had another buddy pulling spinners in 20 feet of water. It took him about 2 hours to get his limit. After we got our 10 fish today, I said, well, guys, let's go try something a little different. What do you want to do? I said, let's go cast some windblown shorelines. It was a nice, stiff 20-mile-an-hour breeze, making a nice mud line on a shoreline that I could see from where I was fishing. And we put some number 6 flicker shads on and went and casted up 5 more walleyes for me to put in the freezer and another 8 or 10 to throw back, take pictures of. And again, in one day, caught them in 5 feet of water, 13 feet of water, and 20 feet of water. And probably could have caught them at any depth in between if I wanted to really look for the right places. So absolutely incredible. Like I said, we got into some of those white bass today. I actually measured a couple because they were pulled them over the side. And when you can literally hear the strain on your fishing rod because you're lifting a fish that's too heavy, you should have netted it. You gotta measure it. We had 3 white bass today, Chad, over 18 inches long. And
oh man,
you're absolutely correct. The only other place you see those is in the deep South.
All right.
You go to Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, maybe Texas, you'll see some white bass that big. But even there, it's unheard of to see 3 or 4 of them in a day. And that's what we had today. So absolutely, you never know what's going to bite. Makes it exciting, makes it fun. And quite honestly, Chad, none of the species you rattled off would be considered a rough fish by anybody, right? When you have to find a fish to pick on, so you get upset when you catch a 5-pound northern pike. That's pretty good when that's the worst thing you're going to catch in a lake is a northern pike, right? No carp, no catfish, no sheephead, none of that stuff. It's everything's a game fish, so it makes it really, really exciting and fun for everybody that comes here.
Now, you think you just answered my question, but what's the bite like right now?
It's coming around. Today was the first day, Chad, I can honestly say for 2024 where it felt like Devil's Lake woke up. As you know, being in the North Country, your weather hasn't been much different than our weather. It's been rainy. It's been windy. I'm not going to say that it's been warm at all. I think today might be the first or second day I went wire to wire in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. Normally by the last week of June, that's standard operating gear, right? You don't need a sweatshirt anymore. You don't need long pants. You get up and go after it. Water temperatures are still only 65, 66, maybe 67 degrees. So it's taken a while for the sleeping giant to wake up. And today she woke up in a hurry. So I think we've turned the corner. You never know. Another wicked cold front could come through and slow it down, but the bite is good. Bobbers and leeches just about on any piece of structure, or like you said before, flooded timber. Still can cast shallow and catch them. The bottom bouncer and spinner bite is starting to come around on all the flooded roads and edges of deeper structure. And it won't be too long now. You'll be able to get a jig wrap or a hair jig and go out and vertical jig deep and catch some walleyes that way too. So she's coming around, and the rest of the summer is going to be really, really good. Tons of fish in the system right now, and they're starting to bite. So what more can you ask for?
Yeah, it's a walleye fishing carnival.
Yes, it is.
We were up there with Dave Randash earlier this year, and Dave was saying that you probably know these stats, but Game and Fish is saying that there are more walleyes in the system now than there's ever been from their surveys and so on. So it's incredible.
And you know what else to go with that, Chad? 50% of the walleye in Devil's Lake are between 14 and 20 inches long.
Yeah, nice.
So you find another fishery right now in North America where 1 out of 2 fish you hook is going to go in your live well. Really?
A good eater.
Really? I mean, Chad, you and I have fished all over the country. That doesn't happen.
No,
that doesn't
happen,
no. Right? That's unbelievable where 50% of the walleye in a lake are keeper frying fish, right?
Perfect.
It's incredible.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. One of the things that you spend a lot of time doing is sharing all of your knowledge with all of us, which I'll just go on and say that we are very grateful for. But why is that such a passion for you? Why spread the gospel of fishing as much as you do through all your social media accounts? And you've got your walleye universities with Shields that you do, and you go around the country and educate other anglers. Why do that?
Well, obviously, the number one reason is I get paid to do it, right? I can't deny that. Guys got to put food on the table, but don't let anyone hear this, Chad, so don't play this podcast to anyone. But okay, I would do it for free. I would do it for free, right? I hate to say that, but honestly, it's a passion that runs deep, and it goes back to that very first question you asked me about how did I get into fishing. Somebody taught me to fish. That somebody or two somebodies that played the biggest role were my father and my grandfather. And because those two men took it out of their time and their busy lives to teach me how to fish and instilled a passion for fishing in me, it allowed me to become somebody. I think of the movie The Jerk, when Steve Martin opened the phone book and saw his name and he goes, "I'm somebody," right? Well, that's how I felt when I started seeing my face on TV and my face on the cover of Walleye Insider magazine. And when I watched TV shows with you and I being broadcast to the world and hoisting trophies over my head, and that passion for fishing and someone taking the time to make sure I was successful on the water led to a lifetime of enjoyment and prosperity. And if I can do that for 6 other kids in this world that might not have the home life they should have, or might not have the father that was fired up to fish and teach them, or if I can do that for a middle-aged guy that got divorced and might be looking in the wrong places to get out of a bad situation, but he can come to a seminar, learn 2 or 3 new techniques, and go catch 10 walleye and say, you know what? I'm not going to do this in life. I'm going to get better at fishing. That means a lot to me. And I get a lot of emails, text messages, Facebook Messenger messages, Chad, just like you do. 99% of those are positive and thanking me for showing me how to do X, Y, and Z. And here's a picture of myself and my grandson at Lake Winnebago with my grandson's first walleye that was 17 inches long. And the smiles are ear to ear, right? And if that doesn't hit you in the feels, then you don't have any feels, brother. That's just the way it is. And it didn't take long when you start sharing your knowledge and you get that gratification from other people, it just makes you want to do it more and more and more. And yes, there is a financial gain. And no, I don't feel guilty about that at all, because engineers go to school for a lot of years to learn how to build bridges, and they get paid to share their knowledge too. So I've been in the school of hard knocks since I was 7 years old. That's about the age I can remember documenting fish catches and paying attention to what I was doing. And yes, I use that for my career, but oh man, it's just watching other people take enjoyment and share the passion that I have for fishing. And I'm going to continue to do that until I can't do it anymore. Maybe it'll be social media. Maybe it's one-on-one. Maybe it's guiding fishermen. Who knows how it's going to change over the next couple decades, but I'm not done yet. I'm going to keep plugging away and keep helping people catch fish and put smiles on their faces.
Mini seminar right now then, okay? So you're out there among them. What is the most common kind of basic question you get from people? Is there one? Is it something simple? Is it something complicated? What do you hear?
Well, the most commonly asked question is the least important. And boy, you might just open yourself up for a 3-hour seminar if we keep going this way. But the most common question, Chad, and I honestly feel it's the absolute least important question about catching a fish, is what color are they biting on today, Johnny?
Right. Yeah.
That is the number one question I get asked, and you have to answer it, right? You can't look at somebody and say, why on earth would you ask that question, right? You got one question to ask a professional fisherman. Please do not ask what color are they biting on. It's by far the least important thing, but it is definitely the question I get asked the most. So of course, my answer is white or something chartreuse, because if you put those two colors on, you're going to catch a walleye no matter where you go. But yeah, it's by far the least important. And if you want to talk about why it's least important, I'll let you decide to ask me that question and we can talk about it, but we don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, we don't need to get into it. Hey, get all the colors and then just keep going through them, and you'll catch some fish. No, I agree. That's one of the things you hear a lot, and it really does not matter. It's the last in the list in my book usually. So let's shift gears a little again. So I didn't know this was happening either. It was one of those deals where when I follow my friend Johnny on social media, all of a sudden I see him out in the Gulf of Mexico, fishing saltwater species in the wintertime. Of course, the first thing that pops into my head is, well, I got to call him because I need to get down there in January sometime. So this is relatively new. You started guiding some in the wintertime down there in Florida. How did that all come about?
So I actually made a conscious decision probably, let me think back, 6 or 7 years ago. I knew that the tournament career wasn't going to last forever. I did not want to be a guy that's got the beard down to his belly button and can hardly stand up out there trying to win another tournament. And I knew when I gave up the tournament fishing, there was going to be an empty void just in my persona, in my gut, in my business that I needed to fill. So I made a very, very conscious effort to start exploring the South for the next phase of Johnnie Candle, the brand. Where is this going to go? I had a little bit of experience in Kentucky and Tennessee. There were several walleye tournaments over the years, Cumberland Lake, Kentucky. I had fished Dale Hollow. I had fished the Tennessee River through Nashville. There's a lot of sauger there, right? I've been to some of those places on other fishing excursions. Thought, maybe I could do that, but it's really not that far south. Had some experience on Table Rock Lake, Lake of the Ozarks, Bull Shoals in Arkansas. Again, fished many PWT events down there. Actually got a couple checks out of Bull Shoals in Arkansas. Lots multi-species fishing. But again, winter there, which is when I wanted to be in the South, was not a strong enough draw to get people that I already knew in the North to come fish Bull Shoals, Arkansas in January, right? Well, if I'm going that far south, I might as well keep going. And people aren't wrong when they say that. So then I looked at Venice, Louisiana, and oh my goodness, for a fishing guide in Florida to say that Venice, Louisiana may be the fishing capital of the world is horrible, because I'm telling people to go somewhere else. But wow, I can't say enough about Venice, Louisiana. They should change it from fishing to catching in Venice, Louisiana, because it's that good. Trout by the millions, redfish. Everywhere you cast, you seem to catch one. You can get offshore for tuna, snapper, grouper, all that stuff. But if you've ever visited Venice, Louisiana, other than to get on a boat and go fishing, you would realize really quick that if you have a significant other in your life that you care about, you will not retire in Venice, Louisiana. It's pretty rough country. It's oil workers. It's depressed. There's not a lot of money there that stays there. There's a lot of money that comes and goes, but it doesn't stay there. And there is another part of the equation with my wife and family that I couldn't set up shop somewhere they wouldn't want to be. So I started working around the Gulf, ended up through a friend that Chad, Christine Hauptman, who was the Masters Walleye Circuit tournament director for many years, worked at North American Fisherman magazine for many years. She turned me on to this little town of Carabel, Florida, that she had discovered and bought a home in, and said, Johnny, I think this is what you're looking for. I went there for a week, hired a charter captain, and by the end of the week had been made several offers on center console boats to buy my own. Ended up a year later with my own boat, rented a house for a month just to see, can I catch these fish? And then the next year set up shop, bought a house, got the boat in a garage down there. I have a Suburban down there. So I have Johnnie Candle North and Johnnie Candle South. And now I've been guiding. This coming winter will be my third year taking guide trips on the Gulf of Mexico. And it was 100% planned. I'm not the spot that I ended up planned, but the whole concept of being able to guide all summer up north and then eventually spend a bigger part of winter down south guiding down there as well and bounce back and forth. My wife is getting closer to retirement age as well. So the two of us are really looking forward to, I don't even want to call it snowbirding, but I guess that's what the world calls it.
Right.
But we're looking forward to it. I'm learning more and more. It's put a spring in my step, Chad, like I haven't had since I was a young man tournament fishing, right? It's every day's a new day. I still catch a fish every now and again that I have to pick up my phone app and go, is it safe to touch this, and take a picture of it? Right? So, it's been a riot. You followed along on Facebook. I'm having some fairly good success down there. I feel confident that I can put clients on fish very consistently, and it's only going to get better with time.
What's the learning curve been like? And I imagine that you've been able to translate a lot of what you've learned fishing freshwater fish to saltwater, or has it been more difficult than you thought?
Actually, it's been, you hate to say this, but it's been easy. I've made some very good friends down there because of my personality, and I'm looking for information. I've got a couple charter captains and a couple guys that work for charter captains as first mates that when they're not guiding as well, they'll jump in a boat with me and show me some spots, help me learn the ropes. And at the end of last winter, when I came home, one of those gentlemen said to me, Johnny, if you would move down here full time, you would own this business in 3 more years, because the things you do on the water, no one has seen here before. And what he's talking about is the use of technology. Right. I've become a marine electronics expert. I train on Humminbird, Johnson Outdoors, Minn Kota products as part of my job. It's part of my brand. I don't just punch in a waypoint of a shipwreck and drive to it, hit spot lock, and start fishing. I watch my graph the entire time I'm driving to said shipwreck. And there's many, many days I never get to the shipwreck because all the fish I drive over on the way out there might as well be fished for. I'm showing people from the Gulf of Mexico spots that they didn't know exist because I'm attentive to detail. I use the technology to its fullest advantage. And one thing I will say about saltwater fish, Chad, is they eat. They eat a lot. They eat often. And if you find one on your marine electronics, you will catch it. It's not like going to a mud flat on Mille Lacs Lake, staring at the same 10 walleye for 45 minutes, trying to figure out why my 10-foot leader's not getting a bite, right? If you find them, you'll catch them. But the ocean's really, really big, so it's harder to find them. But the learning curve has been extremely short. Again, there's a lot of rigging I need to learn. I've got my backside handed to me because I go after some really big fish undermatched. Never in my life, Chad, did I think a size 10,000 spinning reel wasn't big enough. But it's not big enough some days, right? So I'm learning that stuff. I still can't tie a Bimini twist. I don't know if I'll ever be able to, right? You wrap it around your knees, your elbows, your mouth, your head. It's a very complicated knot. I cannot throw a cast net to save my life. I joke with my wife that if they ever find me dead in the Gulf of Mexico, I'll be entwined in a 10-foot cast net because when I throw it, it gets all wrapped around everything. It's a horrible mess. So I don't want to mislead anyone to make it sound like I'm an expert. I have a lot to learn still, but the basics of finding fish, putting a presentation in front of those fish, and landing those fish is pretty much universal. And I've been doing that my whole life. I'm just doing it in a different place now. So it's come to me rather quickly. And it's a lot of fun,
Well, this has been awesome, Johnny. But before we wrap it up, we mentioned the technology, and I know how much you know about the electronics that you use. And of course, forward-facing sonar's got everybody all stewed up in different ways, and tournament this and that and the other thing, and it is incredible. You and I both know how amazing it is. But what are your thoughts on forward-facing sonar? Do you use it, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, I use it. I'm a Humminbird guy. I've got Mega Live on my boat. it's a lot of fun. It's taught me a lot about fish behavior that I've been teaching wrong for a lot of years. For decades, giving fishing seminars, one of my favorite lines is fish above the fish, right? If you're going to make a mistake, you want to fish above the fish. Their eyes are in the top of their head. They don't go down to eat until you throw a jig in front of a walleye that's 4 feet off the bottom, and it watches that jig go to the bottom and swims down to the bottom faster than you can see it and picks your jig up and eats it, right? So check one box. Johnny was wrong. Check, right? I mean, we're learning so much about fish behavior because we can now see them. Is it helping me catch more fish? Yeah, it is. It's showing me fish in places I couldn't see them before. Devil's Lake, beautiful point. Drive through flooded timber and spotlight the tops of those trees with your forward-facing sonar, and you can now see fish in the trees. You don't have to guess. You can see them. So, yeah. Is it showing me fish, helping me catch fish? Sure it is. Is it the evil that some of the world is painting it out to be, Chad? I don't believe so. Daryl Lawrence came out with the green box in the late 50s or early 60s, if I'm not mistaken, and that was going to destroy fishing. The mankind is going to empty every lake we have in the world, and guess what? We didn't. And then liquid crystal sonar came out, and you could now see the history with paper graphs, and oh my goodness, the technology's so good, we're going to fish all our lakes out, and we didn't. And then GPS and mapping came along, and wow, we should ban this because we're going to fish all the lakes, and we didn't. And underwater cameras and side imaging. Do I need to keep going? I don't think I do. No. Are we going to have to learn to be a little bit more responsible as anglers because of this new technology? I won't deny that. I won't deny that. I've listened to a lot of really, really big names talk about it, Al Linder being one. Is there some concern there that we need to maybe step back a little, look at limits, look at seasons, all that kind of stuff? I'm not against that at all. I would love to sit down with North Dakota Game and Fish or even a national level and say, hey, look, if this technology makes us more efficient anglers, which it does, maybe limits do need to be reduced, right? Maybe we need to look at that. I'm not going to say yes or no, but is it evil? Should it be banned from tournaments? Absolutely not, right? Just look at technology in our lives, Chad. What things we have now that we didn't have before, that if we had looked at them and said, oh my goodness, we can't use an electric cake mixer because now we're going to make more cakes and everybody's going to get sugar diabetes and you can't blame that on a cake mixer, right? You can't. And I know that's an absurd illustration, but I was being absurd to prove a point. It's here to stay. They're not going to take it away. It's fun. It's educational. One thing I love about it is it seems to be getting youth more involved in fishing, right? It's a video game now, and kids get technology. They like technology. And my goodness, I'd rather have my granddaughter, who's 7 years old right now, as she gets older, I'd rather have her looking at forward-facing sonar, flipping a puppet minnow or a jig and wrap to a fish 30 feet away than looking at a screen in the house with a Xbox remote shooting zombies in the head with an M16, right? Give them something they like to do.
Amen.
Get them outside doing it. And how can that be bad? How can it be bad? I don't think it's bad at all. So it'll bring changes. There'll be a lot of discussion about it, but it's here to stay. And I've embraced it. I love it. And I think it's beneficial in the long run, but definitely will cause some interesting discussion the next couple of years.
Well, that takes this last question off the thing. I was going to ask you what the future of fishing looks like, but I think we just nailed on that. So, you know what, Johnny, this has been awesome, and it's been way too much of your time, and I so appreciate it. Listen, folks, if you want to go fish one of the greatest fisheries in North America, this is the guy to do it with. Unfortunately, it sounds like you won't be able to do it with him for a while unless you've already got it booked. But Johnny, how do people get a hold of you? How do they follow you? Where do we find Johnnie Candle, and where do we see all his adventures?
So JohnnieCandle.com is my website. Pretty straightforward. Type it in Google, Johnnie Candle. It'll pop right up. Everything you need to know about guiding North Dakota, Gulf of Mexico, it's all on there. You want to follow my daily escapades? Jump on Facebook. I do have spots on other social media platforms, but quite honestly, that's not my target market. I'm not a TikTok guy. I'm not an Instagram guy. I get way too many girlfriend requests when I go on some of those platforms. So I'm a Facebook guy. Johnnie Candle Professional Angler. You want to follow that page. If you send me a friend request on my personal page, it will not get answered. That is truly limited to very, very close high school, college friends, family, that kind of stuff. So my social media presence is Johnnie Candle Professional Angler. I post daily, whether I have something good, bad, or ugly to say. I tell it how it is. When I catch them, I tell you. If I get shellacked on the lake, I'm going to tell you that too. So I post something every day. Follow along. Love to have you. Ask questions. That's how you learn. And if you want to go fishing, give me a shout. We'll find a way to fit you in somewhere.
And one of the things I like on it's not just the results of the days on the water, but some of the great tips that you're always giving in the shop there with rigging or, different tackle adjustments and so on. Yeah, it's great stuff. So make sure you do check that out. Johnny just does a wonderful job. And my man, I thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great, great discussion, and I cannot wait to get up there and spend a little time on the water with you. I hope we can get that pulled off later this year. And thanks again. I appreciate it.
Oh, glad to have me. I've been glad to be here, and we'll make it happen, Chad. Not a problem. We'll get you out here somehow this fall.
All right. JohnnieCandle.com. He's the man. Thanks again, Johnny. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right. Thanks again, Johnny, for joining us on the Northland Outdoors Podcast, folks. The guy is amazing, and he has been doing it a really, really long time. So make sure you go to JohnnieCandle.com and check out all the stuff there. Follow him on Facebook. The information is fantastic. And if you want to go fish Devil's Lake, or if you want to go fish the Gulf of Mexico, I cannot recommend Johnny more. Now, before we go, a quick reminder again to get over to inforum.com and subscribe. Make sure you don't miss a minute of the Northland Outdoors Podcast or any of the Northland Outdoors information that is always popping up on the Inforum site. And also another reminder, please make sure you tune in Sunday night after the 10 o'clock news on the WDAY North Dakota ABC network to see the next episode of Northland Outdoors Television. So until next time, I'm Chad Koel. Thanks for listening and watching, and we will see you next time on the Northland Outdoors Podcast.